Hey everyone, it's Viphan again, and I'm a senior software engineer. And in this part of the mega tutorial series on Angular e-commerce, we are going to build the whole checkout flow. And this is a critical part of an e-commerce application. So if I show you how it is going to be like, so we have some products that we added here, and we go in the cart here, and then we can change the quantities here, and then we can proceed to checkout. Now, once we proceed to checkout, and if the user is not logged in, we will get a sign in dialog here like this. We can also go to sign up here to sign up, or we can go to sign in. So I have some dummy credentials here, and once you sign in, you're gonna see this nice profile icon here. You can also sign out if you would like to. And then you have this whole shipping information form, the payment options, and an order summary, which is similar to this order summary, but different in that it has these extra line items one by one so that the user can see a good summary of all of its items. And if the user wants to change, he can also change it by going here and come back here, and it's going to update it in real time. After that, the user can then place order, and he will be taken to after payment. Obviously, that part is not here. That part is going to be added when we integrate the backend. But currently, it just comes back to order success after creating the order. And you'll notice that once you continue shopping, you are not going to have those items, so the cart becomes empty. So all of this flow we are going to build in this video, and the first will be sign in, sign up dialog and its functionality, and then the whole checkout flow, the form, the summarize order, and the order success page. So let's get started. And as before, if you would like to get the final code and you don't want to follow through the whole tutorial or wait for more parts, you can just get the final code and you can use it in your own projects. This also helps support the channel, so any help will be appreciated. Okay, so this is where we left off in the previous video, and we built up the shopping cart, the whole layout, and we stopped at creating the order summary. We created a reusable component for that, but we missed out the button here at the end. Now to add the button at the end, we would like to create it in a way that we can customize it, because we want different buttons on the cart page and different button on the checkout page. And this brings us to the concept of multi-slot content projection. So currently, as you can see in your component, so if for example, we go in your product cart component, you're going to see that we just have one ng content. So this is the default content projection where you have only one place where you can project the content. But Angular also provides you the facility of multi-slot content projection. Now, multi-slot content projection means that when you want to create multiple ng content blocks in your component, in your usable component, so that you can place different things at different places in your component. Okay. Now, in our case, we want to have two places here. So one of the place will be where we will have the button at the bottom here. And at the top as well, as you saw in the example I just showed you in the final app, there will be a summary section of the individual line items of the product as well at the top here. So these two places we are going to use multi-slot content projections. And for multi-slot content projection, the most common way is to use attribute selectors. So you specify simple attributes that you can associate it with different content blocks and which you can project from outside. Okay. So in summarize order, let's go in summarize order. You're going to see that we have this total here. Now at the end of this, we are going to add an ng content. Okay. And this ng content is not going to be the default one. So this is going to have a select property, and it's going to select action buttons here like this. So this square braces means that this is going to be a custom attribute selector for content projection. All right. So this means that if you go back to your cart page here like this, view cart, and then if you go in your summarize order and you now can give some content inside of this, and here then you can add a button here and you can project it in that specific area. You can specify an ng container because you want to project it in that specific area, or you can also just project the button there as well, but we're going to use an ng container. The ng container in Angular is an empty container, so this is not going to get rendered on the dock in the final app. So we're going to specify action buttons here like this. So we're going to then do button. This is going to be button, and we will have a filled button, and we're going to fill this hole, a bit of margin at the top and a bit of padding. Okay, and this is going to be called proceed to checkout. And we're going to add the functionality there in a bit, but let's save this and let's see how this looks like. And now you can go back to your app here and you can see that we have this nice proceed to checkout button at the bottom here. Now in the next page, in the checkout page, we're going to use the same reusable component, but we're going to give a different button there because we need a place order button here with different functionality. Okay, so in the proceed to checkout button, we actually would not like to directly go to checkout unless the user is already logged in. And for the login process for this sign in and sign up, I would like to have a dialog so that we can use that dialog in multiple places, okay? From here as well and through here as well. So we're going to use an Angular material dialog, and let's first build that dialog. So we are going to create a component here. We're going to call this as NgRx. And in your components folder, because it's usable, we use it in multiple places. We are going to do sign in, and we're going to specifically say that it's sign in dialog. Okay, and while we are at it, we can also create the sign up dialog because it's going to be similar to this. Let's start styling this out. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time now in building the layout because you get the gist of how to create layouts, how to add tailwind classes. So I'm just going to copy paste the layouts here so that we can be quick in this tutorial. All right, so the first section we want to do is at the top here. It is going to be the container. Now remember, we have about padding and we have a maximum width of 400, and then we have flex and flex column to arrange the dialog in a vertical way. All right, all of those fields. And then we have a top section here, which is going to be the title and the subtitle, and also the close button, because in any dialog we need to have that close button. It's going to have flex justify between. So we're going to have this section on the left where we're going to have the title, sign in, and sign into your account to continue shopping. And then we'll have a button on the right side, which will be the close button here, okay? It's going to be an icon button, so we need to import that. So let's import the icon button here. Let's import the icon here as well. Okay, so this needs to be mat dialog close because we're using just this one in the dialog itself, okay? So mat dialog close is a directive added to the button close button, and it's going to automatically close the dialog that is currently being accessed. So this is a quick way to actually add close functionality to the dialog. All right, so we have our top section here, and then we're going to add our form here. So we're going to create a form here, and within this form, then we're going to have your sign-in form. So our sign-in form, as you saw, is going to be just two fields, which will be the email and which will be the password. But before that, a bit of a primer on the form landscape in Angular. Okay, so for forms implementation, there are two options for you to choose from currently in Angular version 20. So we have the template driven forms. This means that most of the logic of the forms, the validation, the binding and all of that stuff is in the template of the form. Then there's reactive forms, which is more directly tied in with RxJS and observable. But this has the good thing that most of the logic for the forms is basically in the component itself, in the code. So we define it using the form group, using the form group class. All right. I'm going to go with reactive forms in the current implementation. But you also would like to know just a bit about the signal forms, which are upcoming in version 21. They will be experiment, but they will be released in version 21, hopefully in about 10 or 15 days. So signal forms is basically the best of all of these forms. So it integrates tightly with signals. So once we get that, I'm going to switch this app to using signal forms as well. But signal forms in its way is it also has the logic in the component, most of the validation logic in the component. So it is closer to reactive forms in that way. That is why I'm using reactive forms currently. All right. So how do we create reactive forms then? So let's go back to the code. Okay, we're going to first create the Angular form itself, the form group itself, reactive form. So we are going to create FP, which we're going to call as a form builder. This is going to not take the normal form builder, but we are going to take a non-nullable form builder. Okay. Now, why we do that is because if we don't do that, we are going to get a default type of nullable type, but we want that our fields are not nullable. All right. Then after that, we're going to define our sign-in form here like this. And then we're going to use FB here, which is a form builder. And we're going to specify a group here like this. Okay, now within that, we can then define our fields here. The fields that we have. So we just have two fields here. The first one is email. And we are going to give some initial value here just to test. And then we'll have a validator of required. So these two fields are required. Then we'll have a password. And this password is going to have just a default value of this. So just to show in the demo. And then this will also be a required field. Okay. Okay, this is usually how you specify validators. If there are multiple, you are going to give this in the form of an array. All right. Okay, so we have our sign-in form all set up here. Now we want to create the layout here. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to copy paste these two form fields here. Okay. So there are these two form fields here, and we first need to also import your mat form field. Let's import this, okay? And then we also have some things, mat input, for example, we need mat input, mat icon we already have, and then we also need mat suffix here, all right? So we need mat suffix here. So we're using suffix for this, for those nice icons at the end of your form field. So basically what we do here is that we have our mat form field and we have an input here, and then we have within that input, we have a mat icon here, which is a lock icon for the password here, okay? And in fact, we do have a mat prefix here, so we are going to also add mat prefix so that we can show all of these things, okay? Now you'll notice that in the password, we have the type as password so that we can hide it, but we also have a type with a password visible signal being used here, okay? So we use this to actually show and hide the password, and in the suffix, you'll see that we have a button icon here, which actually sets the password visible value here. Okay, so let's add a signal here, which we're going to use as password visible, and this is going to be a signal. Initially, it will be false, okay? So now you can see all the errors go away because we are just using these signals to set the type of the password. And we can actually just remove this actually because we want to make this conditional on this, okay? And clicking on this is going to set the password visible, toggle the password visible, and then the icon will also change. It will change its visibility off to visibility. After these two fields, we'll also want to have your button here, the submit button here. So we're gonna just copy paste this here. And you can see that we have a mat button field and class width full. So to test this out, we are going to use our mat dialog service, and we can use that to show our dialog. So let's go. Where do we have to do that? So we need to do that in our view card because proceed to checkout comes from there. So let's add click here, click event here, and let's call this click event as, okay, in this click event, we want to add an event handler. But even better is that we can actually use the store and we can actually add all of the proceed to checkout functionality because we need to add a few checks to it as well. We can add it to the store as well. So let's add it to the store and let's do store inject an e-commerce store. So now in my store, I'm going to add a function for this purpose. So I'm going to go in my e-commerce store and I'm going to add a method here. I'm going to call this method as proceed to checkout. So this is not going to take anything because we already have all of that information in the cart. So it's just going to proceed to the checkout and we are going to open the dialog here. So let's just call this function here, store.proceed to checkout. Okay. And let's go back and build up this functionality. We need to use the mat dialog service. So we are going to inject this here as well. So we can inject anything in the with methods here, just like we have the toaster here. We can inject your dialog as well. So let's do inject mat dialog like this. And then we can do dialog.open and we can do sign in dialog here like this. Okay, we're going to give a parameter here in the options as well, and that would be disable close. So it's going to disable the closing when you click on the background. All right. Let's test this out. And once you click on this, now you can see that we have some layout. So you can see we have sign in to your account to continue shopping, and we can close. But you can see the fields are a bit problematic. So we need to change the appearance a bit, and we don't have a button here. The button is not working here properly. So we need to also do something about that. So let's correct these issues. We're going to go back in your sign in dialog. And so you can see that it has the default Angular material form field appearance. So we actually made some changes to that in our styling, but we also need to make some changes in my app config, okay? So I'm going to go and I'm going to provide the global token for the material form field, and I'm going to use mat and form field default options. So this is going to give some default config for all of the mat form fields. And I want to make the appearance here as outline because I like to use that. And then subscript sizing, which is basically the space at the bottom of each for the error. I want to only show it when there is an error, so I want to make it dynamic. This saves some space for us. And for float label, I want to do it never. And now when we click on this, you can see that the field that we have look much better, all right? So we're going to import the mat button here as well, which we haven't imported as yet, okay? And we should be able to see a mat button here. Okay, so this already looks really nice. And we also need to add some padding here. So let me see. So we missed out some margin top in the sign in dialog. So let me add this in the form here. So I'm going to add this in the form here like this, margin top 6. Okay, so the layout now should look nice. So as you can see, it looks as good as it can. Great. We also want to link it with the form group. We need to specify the form group here. And we're going to call this as sign in form that we declared at the bottom, as you saw. But to actually use this, we're going to also need to import the reactive forms module here. Okay, so you can see now the error goes away, and in the form we have our form group here, and obviously we have our button, and this button is type of submit, so it's going to call the form submit. And in order to catch that, we are going to use the ng submit here. Now this is going to call this code when the form actually submits. So we are going to do that like this, sign in. Okay, and then you can see here, since we copy pasted the code, you can see the form control name here is already set. So this form control name is basically your linkage with the individual field, right? So this means that once you save this now and we add this at the bottom and we save this, you're going to see that we will have your initial values already set. That means that the form is now linked with the form group because we gave these initial values in this form group here. Okay, so this is a basic reactive form. So what should now happen when we actually submit this form? Let's add the code for that. So the first thing we need to do is we need to check if it is valid. So if all of the fields are filled, if not, it shouldn't allow it to submit. Okay, so this is the standard procedure, and we do this sign in form and dot valid. So this property gives us the validity of this form based on the validators that we have here. Okay, so if it is empty, it's not going to be valid, so it's going to be false. And if it's false, we would just want to return the function here. All right, and we also want to do sign in form dot mark all as touched. Okay, what this does is that triggers it to show the red outline on the forms itself. Now I'm not adding the mat errors here explicitly because it's not really that difficult a thing. You can just look in the documentation for that. But the outline around the form is going to show up when you do mark all as touched here automatically. Once that is done, we're going to take the values of your email and your password from the form. So we're going to do this dot sign in form dot value here like this. Okay, and then we are going to call our store function to sign in, something like this, with our email and password. Okay, so since we have these parameters here like this, we can also create these parameters in model so that we can actually reuse them and specify them when we create the store function. We're going to create a user model here, which is going to also contain our sign up and authentication related types. So first of all, we're also going to specify our user here. So we'll have an ID, name, and URL here like this. Okay, so this is just a user with a minimal amount of information that we need. And then we'll have your sign in params here like this. In fact, we can also first have your sign up params here like this, because sign in would be a subset of the sign up. So these types are going to be name, email, and password initially. But for sign in, then it's going to be omit, and we omit the name from this, and we omit it from the sign up params. So you can see that it now derives the type of this sign in from the sign up param. So this makes it easy to reuse. So we have sign in params, and now we can use these sign in params here as well. So we can do sign in params. Okay, but we don't have a sign in function as yet. So let's create that, and we are going to say sign in params here like this. So we can give it something like this, param sign in params imported from model user, and then we are going to do something like this. Okay, so then what you need to do is we need to just to show in this demo, I'm just going to patch the state so that the app can know if a user is logged in or not. I'm going to add a new type here for a user here. Okay, now this user is going to be of type user, and obviously it can also be null here, or better than null, I like to keep undefined. Okay, because this is more explicit. And user, so user or user undefined. So initially when there is no user logged in, it's going to be undefined state, and otherwise it's going to be user here. So initially we're going to keep it as undefined here like this, and it's going to not give an issue here. Then we're going to just do that state, and in the store we are going to then give a user, and we're going to give a dummy user here, something like this. We can do email and password, and it's going to log in directly here. Okay, So once we do sign in, it's going to log in directly here, and then we can call that. Okay, so we need to also inject the store here now. So inject e-commerce store, and this flow should work as it is. All right. But one problem here is that we also want to redirect to the checkout page once this sign-in process is complete. Well, for that, we need to parameterize the dialog. So we need to send a special parameter to this dialog, because this dialog can be called from proceed to checkout, or it can also be called from this button here. So if it's called from this button here, we don't want to actually proceed to checkout. If it calls it from this, then we need to proceed to checkout after the sign up process is complete. So in order to send a parameter to the dialog, we would like to see where we are actually opening the dialog. So in the e-commerce store, in the proceed to checkout, we have this dialog.open. So we need to then send some parameter from here. So in the material dialog open, we can also send in a data in your options for this dialog opening. Okay. So in this data, then we can just simply give a property. For example, we can say checkout is equals to true. And then we can go in your sign in dialog and we can inject this property, because this is going to get injected into this dialog using a token in Angular. We're going to do data is equals to, and we can inject, and here we're going to also specify the type here. So it's going to be checkout, and it's going to be Boolean here like this. And so this is going to be a mat dialog data here. Okay. So this is the token that is injected for this specific dialog when it opens up. All right, so we have this data here, and now we can simply send this to the sign in here like this, and we can also check in sign in params here. So we can also in sign up as well, we'll also need that. We can say checkout. This is going to be a Boolean, and this can be optional, so we don't need to actually send it. But if it's there, we need to check it, and then we'll send another thing here. We can also do dialog ID here. So this is going to be a string. All right. Okay. So we have these, and the sign in param automatically get these as it is. All right. So let's go back to our sign in dialog here. Checkout will be this dot data checkout. Okay. And then we'll have dialog ID as, and we can also inject the dialog. So we can do inject mat dialog ref is going to give the dialog reference of this, and we can get the ID from this. All right. So we can do this dot dialog reference dot ID here. Okay. So we're going to get this as a string. All right. So then we can use this as a sign in param. So let's go in and sign in, and we're going to add checkout here like this, and also dialog ID here like this. So we're going to do if checkout, then we can simply route to the checkout page after this sign in process is done. So what we can do is we can also add a router here. So we can do router inject, and this is the beauty of Angular's dependency injection, that you can actually inject any service that you want to use, any global service that you would like to use. So if checkout, then we can do router.navigate, and we can simply go to checkout here like this. Okay, great. We would also like to close the dialog itself. We can change this dialog to a different name. So we can say mat dialog instead of dialog, and we can change this to mat. Okay, so here we can do then mat dialog dot get dialog by ID, and we can send in the dialog ID. And in the sign in params, we don't want to make this optional, because we are always going to log in through this dialog. So we'll always have a dialog ID that we need to send. And so this is going to be get dialog by ID, and then this is going to close this. All right. So we can just do directly here as well like this. Great. So then we check out after that. So this is all of the logic for the sign in. And obviously we also need to create a new route for your checkout page. And we are going to create a new component here, ngGC. We're going to put this in pages, and we're going to call this as checkout. Another page called order success. And let's quickly go in the routes, and we're going to add this after the cart here like this. And this is going to be checkout. It's going to be checkout and checkout. And obviously this also needs to be default here like this. Similarly for the order success, we're going to make the same thing, order success. And when we go here, we can give default class here. Now we can actually check out whether this checks out in the right way. So no pun intended. So let's go back and let's now test out this whole flow. So we have proceed to checkout. Once we proceed to checkout, you can see we can close this, or we can do sign in, and you can now see that it moves ahead to the checkout route, and it's empty here because we don't have anything. One thing though, we need to change this status here. So we don't see these buttons here. So we actually would like to add some handling here as well. Okay, so we are now in our header actions, and here we need to add some handling for that. So you can see these two buttons, sign in and sign up. So we need to now check whether our user is logged in or not. So it's quite simple. So we use an if control block, and we do store.user. We can directly access the signal inside of that, which tells us what our user is, whether our user is set or not, and that tells us whether it's logged in or not. And we can give an alias here like this. And if there is a user, we need to give a different mat icon button so that we can have that nice drop down. So I'm just going to copy paste this button here. So we have this button, and this has a mat menu trigger for which I'm going to talk about in a bit. But we have basically an image inside of this with width 8 and height 8 and the user.image URL to form this button there, okay? And then mat menu trigger for is basically when you want to link your button with a material menu. So let's add the material menu at the bottom here like this. So we're going to create this material menu here at the bottom here. We also want to import the material menu here, mat menu from Angular material menu. So we're going to import this, and we're also going to give mat menu item because we also need that. Then mat menu trigger because that is needed to trigger the icon here. So we have mat menu trigger for, and in this mat menu we are creating a reference to this, the mat menu instance, this mat menu instance called user menu here like this, and then we are linking it to the same user menu in the mat menu trigger for here, okay? So for the mat menu, we have an X position before, which means it is going to appear before the target element in which we are clicking on it. And then the first section there is basically just the user.name and the user.email. And then the second section is your button, which is the sign out button here. It's a mat icon plus label button. And we have a store.signout function, which we need to call to actually log out from this, okay? Now notice that this also has mat menu item. So this actually styles it according to how we would want a mat menu, the standard Angular material menu. Now I've also added some custom styling to it, and you can see that in the styles file, or here, you can see we have changed the height a bit to actually look more closer to how I wanted it to be. Okay, so we also have a mat divider here. So I want to add also a mat divider here. Okay, great. So now the layout looks fine, and in this case it's going to be this. Otherwise, in the else case, is going to be the login, the sign in, and the sign up button as it was before. Okay, great. And so it gives an error on store.signout. So next we want to add the implementation to sign out. But first let's also test out how it looks like, all right? So let's now see whether this we can do proceed to checkout, and we do sign in, and now you can see that it moves to checkout, and also since it patched the state of the user, this instantly changed to our nice looking material menu here. Okay, so now let's move on to the sign out, and the sign out is really simple. In your e-commerce store, we're going to do sign out here, and this is going to be very simple patch state, and it's going to give the user as undefined. Okay. And if you go back to your header actions, you can now link it with your header actions here like this. So we can do sign out button here, and in this click event we can do store.signout. Okay, and now if you sign in again from proceed to checkout, here you sign in, and now you can also sign out, and now you can see that we have this. So this is a nice and simple sign in flow that you can actually link up with the NgRx SignalStore to actually get our flow working. Ultimately though, this is going to be linked with authentication, either Firebase or some other backend that you would want to use for the project. All right, so now we need to work on the sign up dialog, which will be very similar to the sign in dialog. First, we need to add a section here in the sign in dialog from where we can actually open up the sign up dialog. So I'm just going to copy paste that here. It's a small section at the bottom here, right below the form. So it is styled in a smallish way, don't have an account. And then in your HA link, we can actually just give open sign up dialog here, and it will be a small button to do that. Okay, so in open sign up dialog, we can then do open sign up dialog, and here we can do this dot dialog. So we need to also inject dialog here, this dialog dot open, and we can do sign up dialog. Okay, and we also need to give disable close as true, And also for the data, we want to pass in the checkout here as well, so that if we sign up from, we get the same parameter that was sent to it initially. Okay, so we're going to do data and we're going to say checkout and we're going to say data.checkout. Okay, something like this. Okay, so let's open sign up dialog here and let's see how this looks like. And we can do proceed to checkout, and you can see we don't have an account. Once you click on sign up, you can see we have a sign up dialog here which works here. Obviously, we also need to close this dialog. So let's also close this dialog when we open this up. So we're going to go just to dialog left dot close here like this. Okay. So now we need to style the sign up dialog and add all of the functionality for this. So a lot of it will be similar to the sign in dialog. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time there. There will be a top section here, which will be very similar to that. In fact, I'm also going to copy the imports because that takes a bit of time and a lot of it is going to be very similar to that. So we can then do this top section here. You can see that we have the same close button and the title, but the title is sign up and join us and start shopping today. That's the only difference. And then below that, we are going to see that we will have the form itself. Okay. Now this form is going to be a bit different, just in the way that it has a name and a confirm password field in addition to the other fields. So let's inject our form here. Okay. So let's create FB and we can do inject non-nullable form builder here. And we can do sign up form is equals to this dot group. And in this group, we can do the first of all the name, which is going to be an initial of, let's say, John D, and it will be required. And we'll have email. So it will be the same thing, John D at test.com or something. And we have just two more fields, and this is password, and this will be confirm password. Okay, so I'm not going to add any validations here. You can actually just find this anywhere on the web to see how to actually add validations. Okay, so I'm just going to copy paste the template here. So there are 4 form fields here, and we are going to have your name here like this. So we can first do form group as sign up form, and then we can give medform field input here as form control name is equals to name. Now AI will really help you in these repetitive tasks. Now I'm not using AI here, but I can do it much faster if I use AI for this purpose because it helps in these repetitive things. Okay, email, and similarly for password and for confirm password. Okay, so this seems to be fine. We're just gonna add some styles here. So there will be a margin top 6. We want to arrange it in a flex column here so that it arranges it like this. Okay, so we also need to add a button at the bottom here. We're going to do button here like this, and you'll notice that we have some checks here on store.loading. So we're going to add, as you saw, that delay is actually a way to show when a network request is being made so that you disable the button and you also show a sort of a different label so that the user knows that, okay, we are doing something. So we can use this when we need it, but currently we are just going to do create account here like this. Okay, we need to add NgSubmit here like this. Okay, and in NgSubmit we are going to do sign up. Okay, so we have sign up here. We can do none sign up just like we did before. And now I'm not gonna take in all of that information and all of that stuff, so I'm just gonna create a store function like this. So we can do e-commerce store here like this, and we can go in your e-commerce store. And sign up is going to be also similar to sign in, but the parameters are going to be sign up params here like this. Email password, the name is only the extra thing here. Otherwise, checkout and all of those stuff remain the same. So we're going to have the same functionality pretty much for all of those things. Okay. Okay. So then we're going to call this store.signup, this store.signup here. And what should be sent here? So as usual, we're going to first do if this.signup form.valid. Now this is again repetitive stuff. So if you want to skip this part, you can actually skip this. I'm just doing this for completeness. Okay. And then here we can get your values that you'd like to form.value. And let's just open up cursor tab just to see what it does here. And you can see name, email, password, and it's going to send name, email, password, dialog ID, and we need to inject a dialog here as well. And you can see how fast this actually makes it. So my dialog reference, it imports that really nicely. And we can do just a dialog here like this. And we can do the password here, name, email, password here as well. And we also obviously need to cast it as sign up params here like this. Import this from here. Okay. and checkout here as well. Obviously this dot checkout. Obviously we also need to listen for the checkout data here. Like so nice and simple, it makes it fast and we can do it like this. All right. And now we can actually test out doing the same thing. Let's also add another section here at the bottom where we can actually just open the sign in dialog. After this form, okay, it's the same thing. It just has an info, allows you to switch between the sign up and the sign in thing. So open sign in dialog here and we can do open sign in dialog here. And you can say that it closes the dialog and it needs to import. So we need to import this. Let's import this here. Okay, so you can see it imports a mat dialog here and then it calls the same thing while passing in the checkout, which because we need to pass it on again to that if it's going there. All right. So let's see how this works now. So we proceed to checkout. Now, in case we don't have an account, we can go in and sign up and we can go and sign up and you have this information here. You can create an account. Once you create an account here, you can see that it goes to checkout and the user is logged in with that account. All right. Great. So our whole sign up flow is working reasonably well. Let's also bind in these two buttons with the sign up dialog. So we can actually do the same thing here. So we can go in your header actions here and we can do click and not store. We actually just want to do open sign in dialog and open sign up dialog here, and we'll need to create two functions here, quick function, and we can import this mat dialog here like this. Okay, and then we actually don't want to do checkout here, so we don't actually need to send this. Okay, and similarly for the sign up dialog, we'll just do sign up dialog here, import this here. Okay, so this should work as it is, but this should not proceed to the checkout. Okay, so we have sign in, and once you do sign in here like this, you can see it does not close the dialog here as well. So we need to, okay, yeah. Yeah, so you can see that we have an error here, cannot read properties of null reading checkout. So that means that we need to add some check there in the dialogs if we don't receive any checkout here. So we're going to do checkout. So we're going to say if this dot data dot checkout, okay, like this. And similarly here as well, we're going to do if this dot data dot checkout here as well. Otherwise it's going to be undefined and it's going to handle that fine. Similarly in sign up, you're going to do the same thing. So in sign up as well, we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to do this dot data dot checkout and this dot data dot checkout. All right, let's test this out again. And we can now do sign in. And once you sign in, you can see that it signs up, but nothing happens. We don't proceed to checkout. And one thing also, if it is logged in already, we don't need to actually open up the dialog. We should just directly be able to go. So we are going to add that as well. So in proceed to checkout in e-commerce store, we also want to check if stored user is false, then we want to do this. All right. Otherwise, we're just going to do, router.navigate and checkout. Right. Great. So let's save this and let's see how this works now. So if we sign in, we've already signed in and we proceed to checkout, directly goes there. If we sign out and we try to do it, we are not going to be able to do it. And we sign in and we can then go there like this. Okay, great. So all of this flow works really fine. Okay, so with our sign in sign up process all complete and our dialogues working, now we can move on to actually proceeding for the checkout here like this. Okay, so we need to design our checkout page. Let's go in our checkout page and I'm going to add the layouts pretty quickly here because you already know how to add these layouts. I'm going to create some component. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to add this initial template here. As you can see, so we have the back button, which we can import from the back button. And this is going to be back to cart and it will have your cart option here like this. You will have navigate to cart here like this instead of the products page here in this case. Okay, so this is the back button. Then we'll have the checkout heading with the styling here, as you can see. Now after that, the layout is going to be something like this. So we'll have a grid with basically in our bigger screen in LG, we are going to have a 5-column grid here. So 3 columns are going to be for the left side area and 2 columns for the right side, the summary of the order. So within this, we are going to add up all of our layouts. So the first thing we are going to do is in the first div here, we are going to have our shipping form and we are going to have our payment form. So we're going to create different components for that, but let's add some styling here first. So this is going to span 3 columns. Column span means that it's going to span 3 columns out of the 5 columns here and do a flex columns within that. All right, great. So let's create these two components now, and let's create NgGC, and in our pages, in the checkout pages, because this is a subset of that, we're going to create shipping form and the payment form. Okay, let's import these here, shipping form and your payment form. Great. And then after that, we are just going to have my summarize order, which we already have that component. So I'm just going to do, this is going to span to, okay, and we're just going to do summarize order here like this. Of course, we're going to use multi-slot content projection to send in different data here for the action buttons and for the top section here as well. But right now it's okay. All right, so we have shipping form here. Let's go on and build the shipping form first. So in the shipping form, as you've already built two forms in sign up and sign in, I'm just going to copy paste this. So first of all is going to be the app view panel. As you remember, we need to import this view panel directive that we are using for our panels because it's the same panel that we're using. Similarly, within that, we're going to give a heading with a nice icon here like this. Okay, so we also need to import our icon here like this. So this is a local shipping icon. It really gives a nice feel to your headings when we give this icon along with our titles. Okay, and then after that, we're going to build the form. So for the form, we are going to have this large form. So we also need to import. So let me add the imports here as well, the two imports that we need. And you can see that we have our fields here. We have the first name, we have the last name, we have the address, and for the address, we have column span 2 here. So you can see that we have the grid that has columns 2 normally, but for the address, it's going to take in both of those columns. So it's going to give us a big, nice address field. And then we have the city, state, and the zip is also column span 2 because it's at the end and we want to fill that space. Okay. Great. So let's save this, and we're not going to add any functionality for the form itself. So this should look fine. And then let's go to the payment form. And in the payment form, we're going to add our layout as well. So it's going to be really simple. In this case, it just has one radio button, and this is going to say that, okay, it has Stripe payment option. And let's import this here as well. Let's also add the import. And for the radio group, we get it from your Angular material radio. So import these two from there. Okay, so we have payment options as the heading with the payment icon here like this. And then we have your match radio group with an image of the Stripe logo. So you can get this Stripe logo from anywhere from the official website as well. I'm just gonna copy paste this here in the public folder here. So this is the Stripe logo that we're using, and it's going to get directly used in your image tag here like this. Okay, great. So this is the payment options. So let's go in our checkout again and let's now try it out and see how this looks like. So let's go in our cart here, and let's, for example, we don't need to add anything. Let's just proceed to checkout and see our shipping information. You can see our form looks nice, and you can see the layout, the appearance is the same as the sign up and sign in login thing here. So this is because we added the default options in app.config, which actually styles everything according to how I want it. All right, so this is the shipping information and the payment options. This is already selected, and then you have the order summary here. Let's see if the order summary works. So let's add some products here. Let's add these 3 products, and you can see we have this in add to cart here. And if you proceed to checkout, you can sign in here like this, and you can see now we have the subtotal and the tax here calculated. Now we also want a top section here for your summary of the items line by line. So let's add this next. Okay, so in our checkout here, in our summarize order, we are going to have 2 sections. So in our summarize order first, we are also going to add another section right below the order summary here somewhere. Okay, so right below that, we are going to add a special section here with space y2 and border bottom and a padding of 4 at the bottom. And then within that, we are going to do ng content and select checkout items. Okay, so this is going to be an attribute selector content projection with checkout items as the attribute. So in checkout, then we can give this within the section here like this. So we are going to give in the checkout, we are going to do ng container like before. And within this ng container, we are going to do checkout items. And then here we are going to do for item and item of store.cart items. Now, of course, we don't have the store here as yet. So we are going to inject the store here like this. And for the tracking, we are going to use item.product.id here. And within that, we are going to have this layout here. Flex, justify between. So on the left side, we'll have the item.product name, item quantity. And on the right side, we'll have item.product.price multiplied by item.quantity here. Okay. Of course, we can also add some two fixed 0 here to actually make it rounded into what we want. So let's save this. And now you can see that we have this section here at the top. But if we have any items, it's going to show those items there. So we go in you can see we have order summary here like this. And if you proceed to checkout, then you're going to see that we have this. So we also want to make this, as this border seems to be duplicate border here. So we can just remove this border bottom from here, because we already have a border top here. So there are duplicate borders here in case which shows up in the UI. Okay, so now this looks nice. And you can see that we have our line items separately here, rounded up to the integer, and it adds up everything nicely. Okay, so we need to also add the last button here, which is the place order buttons. We can just go in our checkout here and give another ng container here. We can call this action button, and within that we can give our action button. Okay, so we can give this button here like this. Now, do we have mat button here imported? So we don't have it. So let's add that mat button here. And then you can see that we are using store.loading here to actually have a conditional sort of caption here like this. So this is a nice way to actually show loaders when you're actually doing some network action. So in our case, we are taking it from the store, as you can see. So let's go to your e-commerce store, and we are going to add a loading state as well here. So loading would be Boolean here. And initially, obviously, loading is going to be false. So when we create a place order function, we are actually going to use that loading parameter to set that loading parameter, and it's going to then listen in the button here like this. Okay, and it's going to change the disabled state, and it's also going to change the label of it so that the user knows what is happening. All right, so now we can add the place order function, which is the only thing that is needed. So let's add it in the e-commerce store. Let's keep the sign in and sign up at the end here. And in the checkout here, we can do place order here. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to show the loader state first of all. So we can do loading as true. Next, we want to create our order using this. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm actually just creating a dummy sort of order type so that we can use it in our app here in the store. So in the models, I'm going to add a new called order.ts. And let's say we do something like this. So we have our order, we have the ID of the order, we have the user ID who made the order, and we have the total number, and we have the items. We can import the cart item from here. And the payment status then is going to be success or failure. So we're going to create an order here, and we are just going to do order here, and this is going to be of type order that we just created. So this is then going to be something like this. So we can do the ID as just a random UUID just for this use case. So we can add a check here as well for the user ID. If user, and we can say that, okay, constant user is equals to store.user. Okay, so if user is false, then it's just going to return this, maybe with a notification as well. So it can also give some procedural error that, okay, user, please log in before continuing placing order. Okay, something like that. And now here you can just pass in the user here like this. So user.id. Okay, so now it's going to be assured that, okay, the user is genuine here. And then the total, for this total, we do something like this. We reduce this, the item quantity and the price. And we also obviously do maths.round to this because we don't want to send in a this price. Okay, and then items are like this, and payment status is success. All right. And then what we do after that is we are going to just await a bit just to create a dummy sort of effect of whether we are waiting. So it's just a 1 second wait so that we can do that. And once we add some waiting, we also need to add an async because it now becomes an async await function. And then after that, we can patch state with this. So we can do patch state, and we can do first of all loading false because the order has already been created. And then we can also create these orders. We can clear the cart item as empty, and we can also save these orders somewhere if you'd like to. You can add this state if you want to show them, but currently we don't want to show them. Ultimately we would need to, so I've not added it here, but you can show if you want to. You can add an orders array and you can add it to the orders here. Okay, and lastly we also want to navigate to order success here. navigate, and we can do order success here. All right, so a lot that we have done here. So let's test this out. Let's add some products here and let's go in our cart here. Let's proceed to checkout. Let's log in here, something like this. Let's add some information. Okay. And then in place order, once we click on this, you can see that it waits for 1 second and then it goes to order success here like this. So it says here like this. We can also test another thing. So if we go and add to cart again and we proceed to checkout, and in this order page, for example, we log out. So if somehow the user reaches this place without actually logging in and we try to place the order, it says please log in before placing the order. And obviously it needs to also clear the loading state here. So we're also going to do poster.error and patch state, and it's going to do loading as false so that we can be cleared of that. Great. So now it should work fine. So we sign in here and now we log out here and the user is not here. Please log in before placing the order, and it's not going to allow us to place the order here. So we are going to sign in again. We're going to sign in and we can then place the order here like this, and it goes to the order success works page. And for the order success is just basically just static data. So we are basically just complete with our whole flow. So I'm going to copy paste the imports here like this. And in the template, we are going to add this whole template. I'm just going to give you an overview of this so that you can know. So we have a mat icon here and we have specifically laid it out. We have specifically styled it in the green color and given it a very big height of check circle here. And then below that, we have an order successful. Thank you for your purchase. You will receive an email confirmation shortly in a gray color. And then in the end, we do a button which says continue shopping, and it goes back to the main route, which is the products route here. Now, of course, when you integrate with the backend, you might also have an order cancelled page here. But for now, the order success is fine. Now, in order success, we can also send in a parameter when we actually integrate with the backend, so that we can actually show what items and what products have been confirmed and whether the payment has been confirmed or not. And now you can see the order successful page looks nice, and you can now do it one more time. Let's test this one more time. So you have proceed to checkout. Let's do proceed to checkout. We do sign in and we have this nice data here. We place the order and it goes to the Stripe payment. It comes back. If it's successful, it says order successful, and you can then continue shopping here like this. So this completes the whole checkout flow with in-memory store of the NgRx SignalStore. One last change that I want to make here is to make all of this data that we have to be persisted locally on the browser. So you don't lose the data when you refresh the browser, as we did while we were testing this, okay? So in order to do that, since all of our state is basically in the NgRx SignalStore, we have a very nice automatic way to do that. And that is by using one of the extensions in the NgRx toolkit, which is brought to us by the Angular Architects team. And this is also going to go back in the official NgRx. Some of these are going to go back in the official NgRx implementations as well. But we need the with storage sync feature. And one of the features of the NgRx SignalStore is that it can be extended really easily by using custom features that you can do. Now, I'm not going to go in how to actually create custom features in a lot of depth, but we can just apply different extensions that other people have created as well, okay? So we can use the with storage sync. In order to do that, we need to install this Angular Architects toolkit by doing npm install Angular Architects NgRx toolkit here like this. So we're going to install this, okay? So it's installed now, and now we can use this. We can import this from here. So we can go in and we can import it in from our NgRx toolkit here, and we can import the with storage sync here like this. And then all we have to do is we have to provide this here with a specific key, and it's going to automatically save all of our state whenever it is changed. We can do with storage sync, something like this. And then within that, we can give options to this. So one of the options is key. We can use the key as Modern Store, for example. And then it also has some other options. So we don't want to persist all of the things. So we don't want to persist loading here or, category here and the whole products data, because there are too many. We only want to do wish list because that is what is said by the user, the cart, and the user itself, the login state, all right? So we are going to do just these three things, and we do that by using the select option here. In select, we can actually select the properties that we actually want to the state that we actually want to save. So we're going to save wishlist items and cart items. And we also want to do the user, okay, and go in our app here, and you add to wishlist some of the items and you try to refresh it. You're going to see that it remembers the wishlist items because it is storing it in our local store. And you can actually now add all of these to cart. You can save these things. You can proceed to checkout. You can log in. So that state is also going to get saved. So let's refresh this. You can see the state is saved when it refreshes it. And then we can do place order. And you can see that we can continue shopping. And you can see the login state stays the same. Once you refresh this, at any time, you can see the state remain saved here. So once we sign out, then we obviously the state changes. Okay, so everything remains synced and with just one line of code. And this is the beauty, this is the power of the NgRx SignalStore and one of the benefits of keeping everything in your store here. Like, okay, so in the next video, we're going to do the missing stuff. And that is one big missing stuff is that you can't really click on any of the products here, the product cards here to go in your product detail screen, okay, which has all of the detail of the product and which also has the reviews section. So in the next video, we are going to create the details screen. And I'm also going to add in the view transitions and all the transitions and interactivity. As again, if you'd like to support this channel, a good way would be to get the code from my shop if you're able to. Otherwise, just subscribe the channel and share it with your friends so that it can reach more people. So thanks for watching and I'll see you next time in the next part.